Good evening. Welcome to the City Council meeting of Wednesday, October 4th, 2017. Can I have a roll call, please?
Dan Carey.
Present.
Peg Coniff. Here. Salem Derby.
Present.
Jennifer Hayes. Here. J.P. Kaczynski.
Here.
Joe McCoy.
Here.
Dan Rist.
Here.
Tamara Smith. Here. And Joy Winnie.
Here.
Please all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can I please have a motion for the approval of the minutes of September 20th, 2017?
Second.
Got a motion, a second approval of minutes of September 20th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any noes? Okay, motion still passes. Public speak time. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to address the council other than what's on public hearings? Please come state your name and either position or address, please.
John Mason, Easthampton Parks and Recreation. I just wanted to do the announcement. We've been advertising it, put it in the paper, things like that, and I handed it out to you guys as well. Our Harvest Fest is Saturday, October 14th. It's our 7th annual. I can't believe it's 7 already. Noon to 6. It's a free event, free admission to the park. We have inflatable games for the kids, face painting, horse-drawn carriage rides through the park, pumpkin carving station. We'll have contests for that, a pie eating contest. Dan Kane and Friends will be playing at Pavilion 4 from 2 to 4. We have a bonfire from 4 to 6. We'll have cider donuts and cider for that as well. Just a great day, as long as the weather holds out. It's a great community event, so I'd like to, make sure everybody can attend that day if possible. We also have the dog show, the Yappy Valley Dog Show, starting at 11 that day. Probably 3 or 4 years ago, we combined to have them in the park as well, so it's added more people and more of an attraction for that day. So make sure you get your dogs registered for that. Exactly. Make sure they're licensed too. The Rag Shag Parade is Wednesday, October 25th. We start at the Maple School at 6:30, and we end at Easthampton Savings Bank. The rain date is the Thursday, the 26th. So that's another. I think it was over 1,100 bags of candy last year that we handed out. So it's a well-attended event, and it goes pretty smooth. And thanks to the police department, fire department, and all the volunteers, CERT team, things like that help make that event happen, because we wouldn't be able to do it without everybody chipping in the community, the DPW, and everybody getting stuff like that done. So, any questions or any questions?
No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else from the public like to address the council?
Nice to see some of you again after candidate speed dating last night. Hi, I'm Kay Collins, 4 Carroll Ave, Easthampton. On the voter rolls is Carrie Ann. I'm here on behalf of the Easthampton Community Coalition. As a member of the Easthampton Community Coalition, I'm here to present 775 unique signatures on a petition asking our elected representatives to take action to make Easthampton a safe and welcoming community. We present these signatures to you as a measure of community intention, and we want to enter them into the public record to honor the faith and the trust of the signers who signed on to that petition. The signers include both longtime Easthampton residents and new members of the community who are united in a desire to make our community a safe and welcoming place. While we appreciate the stated policy of our police chief that the goals of the petition are consistent with existing police practice, we have yet to see written policy supporting the opinion that the limited resources of the Easthampton Police are better used in the service of the needs and goals of Easthampton than in those of the federal government. Easthampton is not exempt from the consequences of discrimination. The debates and policies locally and nationally have led to fear in our own community, which has played out even in our schools. We, the signers, are not acting alone. There is a Safe Communities Act in state legislation, with more and more cities and states like Illinois codifying their status as places of support and safety. This can become law. Courts have acted to prevent funding being withheld from communities who pass such legislation. Everybody deserves a safe and welcoming community, especially those displaced by violence and war. So we ask that you use your positions as community leaders to make a choice between becoming a city that protects all of its residents and becoming one that sends a message of hostility to the marginalized people who are our friends, neighbors, and contributors to what makes Easthampton a special place to call home. We ask that you listen to the people of Easthampton who come together to make this request. We ask that the city government use its power to issue an executive order or to pass an ordinance that Easthampton's resources will not be used in enforcement of federal immigration laws. We as a community embrace the well-being of all of our neighbors. And if any of you, including city council members and the mayor, would like to be involved with our Easthampton Community Coalition, you can visit our Facebook page. I'm going to give you a cover letter and copies of the petition into the public record for everybody on the council, and there's one for the public, the general public record as well, the city clerk. Is anybody here to support the ordinance as well? Any signers in the room? Thanks. Sorry. Thank you.
Hi.
Is the cover letter?
The cover letter is right on the top, and the signature is right there. They have been deduplicated.
Thank you.
Final count.
Okay, so it looks pretty clear your request is either an executive order or an ordinance. Is that correct?
Well, at this point, we're not presenting any language on anything in particular right now. We just wanted to make sure that these got into the public record, and it's up to you to take the action that you see fit.
Great. Well, thank you. So by charter rules, or city council rules, which one was it? Property? Charter. So any petition of over 100 signatures automatically gets sent into the council business. So once Barbara certifies, which obviously will have over 100 signatures, we'll put into city council business, probably go to ordinance, and again discussed as it had been in the past. But anyway, again, thank you for your information, and if you'd just like to state your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Andrea Stone, and I live on Crescent Street in Easthampton. And thank you, Kay, and ECC members. I wanted to read the actual language of the petition, since everybody here might not have heard it. We, the undersigned Easthampton residents, are committed to making our community a safe and welcoming place for all people, including immigrants and those who may be marginalized by the current atmosphere of fear facing our country. We therefore urge our elected officials to immediately issue an executive order or to pass an ordinance that Easthampton's resources will not be used in the enforcement of federal immigration laws. It is our understanding that current police practice is already in alignment with this goal, and we seek to enshrine this practice into policy. An ordinance or an executive order would make Easthampton safer by improving community relationships with law enforcement and would protect the city from liability that can result from honoring civil immigration detainer requests. And I'd just like to add why I signed this. Mostly it's because that's the kind of place I want to live in that would support these kinds of things, and I like the diversity already that we have and hope we'd have more. Also, with the discussions that took place, I can't even remember now if it was in the winter or earlier, I suddenly had the realization that I am first generation, and I don't know how that got lost in my self-image. And because my father was able to emigrate, I was able to grow up and live in this country and live in this town, and I'm happy for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
Hello, and thank you for this opportunity to address you this evening. My name is Dr. Sandra Karp, and I live at 15 Cottage Street over here in the affordable housing unit so wonderfully provided by Easthampton. I'm here to voice my support for the position or a statement that has just been presented to you, the Easthampton City Council, and ask you to make Easthampton a welcoming city. I believe a written policy statement by the City Council affirming support for each and every member of this diverse community would be a welcome action for the following reasons. 1. In issuing a policy statement to ensure the safety and dignity of every member of this community, we honor the deeply rooted Judeo-Christian value of hospitality. Secondly, in issuing a policy statement that ensures And secondly, such a policy statement would be a great way to increase the visibility of Easthampton, both in the Pioneer Valley and beyond. Thirdly, residents assured that they are welcome in Easthampton will pay taxes, create businesses, and be consumers of the products and services of those who have already chosen to make Easthampton their home. Finally, such a policy affirmation provides an opportunity to create an annual Easthampton Welcome Festival in which local artists, chefs, and merchants can all come together to celebrate the city's diverse customs, arts, and food. Such a festival would be a unique opportunity to draw the people from all over the Pioneer Valley in support of our business community and to help revitalize our economy. Hospitality, greater visibility, economic expansion, these are all positive reasons for support of the City Council issuance of a written policy statement affirming support for a safe and welcoming Easthampton for all Easthampton residents. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public would like to address the council? No? Going once? Okay, again, thank you very much. So I'm sure most of you are aware of this. The absence of interaction from the council is not because we don't care or interested. We're bound by open meeting laws where if it's not on the agenda, we can't discuss it because then it would be a violation of open meeting laws. But again, as I had said earlier to Kate, sounds like you have enough signatures. It'll be officially put in record and sent into council to move through the process, which it usually does. So again, thank you for your participation. Moving on, communications from elected officials, boards, committees, correspondence, we have none. I believe the mayor is not here, so there are no mayor communications. So we can move right into standing committees. Finance, Councilor Rist.
I have 3 items. Well, first of all, we will be meeting next week at 5 o'clock in room 1 to debate the new items that are will be on our agenda. I'd like to make a first reading of 3 items. First is an interdepartmental transfer. The amount requested is $18,017 to be transferred from the reserve fund, $18,017, to be transferred to DPW highway salary, $4,280, DPW motor repair salary, $1,460, DPW sewer salary, $3,221, DPW wastewater treatment plant salary, $4,790, DPW water salary, $4,266, for a total of $18,017. The amount requested would be used for the following purpose: to provide funds for a recently negotiated collective bargaining agreement. The second item is a supplemental appropriation request from the Community Preservation Committee. The request is hereby made for approval of the following appropriation. The amount requested is $30,000. To be appropriated from CPA Reserve for Open Space, $30,000. To be appropriated to high school batting cage, $30,000. The amount requested would be used for the following purpose: for the purchase of materials, installation of a batting cage at the high school. Lastly, I'd like to, first let me move those 2 items to Finance Committee for review.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to move the previously read interdepartmental transfer and supplemental appropriation of finance for review. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
I'd also like to move for a public hearing for the last 2 items to be held October 18th in East Chambers at 6:15 p.m.
Okay, a motion and a second to set public hearings for those 2 previously read items, October 18th, 6:15 p.m. in these chambers. Is there?
Is
Are you sure? I have the 18th too.
I have the 18th. Today is the 4th?
18th, yeah, whatever. Okay, so the 18th. So is there a second on that public hearing?
Second.
Okay, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes.
I would like to also move to the Finance Committee, the Easthampton Board of Assessors request for approval of finalized values for fiscal year 2018. We're requesting the City Council to schedule a public classification hearing I'd like to move this to Finance Committee for review.
Second.
Okay, motion and second to move to review from Assessor Department of Classification. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
I will not set a public hearing at this time. I believe we have until November to do this, Barb, right?
Usually we do.
All right, so we have time. Thank you, that concludes.
Mr. President, 6:15, I move to open the public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Motion and second to open public hearings. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. Public hearings open. Council Rist.
Thank you, Mr. President. Interdepartmental transfer. So we have been given an interdepartmental transfer of $25,000 from the reserve fund to the treasurer. This is approved by the Finance Committee 3-0. It is a request to replace the KVS software, which has become time-consuming. We're replacing the KVS section of the payroll needs of the treasurer's office and the payroll department. And I'd like the finance director to come up and explain this further to any of you and answer. As I said, the Finance Committee approved this 3-0.
So we're requesting $25,000 to change our payroll processing software. Our system that we use right now is a little outdated, and the software company that we use has merged several times, and they are not really putting money in investing in this particular software, so we have to either upgrade with something with the company that has bought this, or move on to something else. So we are looking at a payroll service, which will afford us a new, the foundation of the payroll software, offer us a little more accessibility to our employees as far as self-service, and some reporting information that we are currently doing manually because of the limitations of the software that we're using. Tax reporting, Affordable Care Act reporting, some of our federal, what is it called, the EOEE report for, you know, we have to sort of compile a lot of that by hand. So we just want to improve our database, improve the function of that database, and use a new system.
And could you refresh my memory, how old is the software we're currently using?
We got it in the 80s.
Okay, so it's a few generations old.
Well, it would be fine if it had been upgraded, but it's still on a fairly old database platform, Cobalt platform. So it's simple in a lot of ways, but it's also very limiting. So I think I cursed a few times today. So you know, it's a struggle for some parts.
Any questions for the Councilor Hicks?
When was our last EEOC trial?
We're doing one right now.
Do you have one from last year?
The HR office has one.
Could you send me a copy of it, please?
Well, HR could probably provide that. They do that out of that office. But so that's part of why we're doing a lot of this stuff, so that how the two departments work together on reporting employee information.
Councilor Winnie?
Your old system was KVS?
Yep, and we still use KVS for tax reporting, for tax collection, RGL, accounts payable, and for whatever reason, prior to the merger of the company, that platform was upgraded and is on a far more sophisticated database. It's basically Oracle Financials, and it's working real well for us. So we're not going to change that part at this time. But there's no plan for the payroll to integrate into the more efficient database.
Did you look at other databases, and can you give us a rough estimate of what other databases would cost compared to this service?
Well, this is a service, so we don't have to actually buy the software, and we don't have to, we are hosting some of it, but Munis, as you know, is the standard in municipalities, and it is a very good software. It is also very expensive. And the last time I got a quote for it, it was several $100,000, and I just didn't think I could compete with the fire department when it came to that thing.
That's a good one.
So, and also because we're going to stay with the GL and the accounts payable and the tax billing with the software that we currently have, it made sense for me to sort of do payroll as a standalone than buying a big system like Munis, where we would have standalone first for the payroll and then not use the other pieces of that software, which part of how it works so well is that it's all integrated. And so, buying a huge integrated software is expensive. So this way we're sort of leaving payroll kind of as a standalone. It will interface with our accounting software, but I think work better for us and be more efficient.
Councilor Hayes?
So because this is a service, is this something that needs to go out to bid because it's over $10,000?
Well, we did get 3 price quotes because it's only $25,000, and we did do that process. And we have found someone that we would like to use. They were the least expensive, but we did do a more of a. We did like them best also, versus the other things.
So we had software, we did this in-house, right, the payroll?
We do it in-house.
In-house.
We still do, yeah, because
Okay,
we
we
haven't
still
made
do.
the change yet.
If we make the change, we're not paying $25,000 for new software, we're paying $25,000 for the service, is that?
For the service, yeah.
And
So
that'll
they'll do
be an
some
annual
of the.
thing?
It will be an annual thing. We do have annual maintenance on our software, and annual maintenance on a more expensive software was not quite $25,000, but probably close to that. So it seemed like a good idea. And then we will have some efficiencies in our office with the service. We also do not have, if this does not work for us and we decide to buy a big system in 3 years, there's no, I could do this for 3 weeks and quit. I mean, that would make my life really difficult, but there is no contract term on this. It is a per payroll transaction.
Per payroll period transaction?
Mm-hmm. Right. And, then they charge us for the W-2 reporting and the
Right.
how many people log in and do their self-service by employee.
Councilor Hayes?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's typically done by like a percentage or how many employees you have.
It's done by employees. It's like there's a transaction fee per payroll and then a transaction fee per person.
Any additional questions, comments?
Just a quick question, how many people are being processed on a weekly basis through this payroll?
I don't know the weekly amount, but annually we do about 600 employees.
600 employees on an annual basis participate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the public like to address the council on this appropriation? Please feel free to come up. Okay, seeing the Councilor Rist.
Thank you, Mr. President. I therefore move that the council accept an interdepartmental transfer for the following appropriation of $25,000 to be transferred from the reserve fund, $25,000, to be transferred to the Treasurer Professional Services, $25,000, to provide funds to cover the cost of a new payroll and human resources software and service.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the interdepartmental transfer, $25,000. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. President. See you there, Chief. I got a little worried. This next appropriation, I was happy to see come to our personally come to our agenda. It is for a deputy fire chief, and we've had no deputy fire chief for a number of years. And before I allow the chief to come up to explain it, you can see by his rather extensive, thorough narrative that there has been many areas in the fire department, administrative areas especially, that have gone wanting and have been tried to be distributed to other members of the department to handle. And I'll let the chief explain that, but having a deputy fire chief also allows for continuity, in my view, of management of a very important safety, public safety service we have. And I wanted to reiterate that the mayor is not here, but strongly supported this and has been working with the chief for a few years to try and figure out a way that we could afford this particular position. It is a $74,000 salaried position. The amount you see is for 6 months because they don't expect to fill this until January, so it would be a 6-month appropriation. The mayor feels confident that it can be sustained, and we certainly, as the Finance Committee, felt comfortable with it and hope the next mayor will also retain it. So that was, the vote was 3-0 by the Finance Committee. I'd like the chief to come up and further enumerate on his reasons, and of course answer your questions.
Good evening. Thank you, Councilor Rist. One of the reasons that, in conversations with Mayor Cadger, is that we needed to start bringing this to the forefront is in any organization, especially public safety, you have to have succession planning. I can tell you that I'm not going to be coming up here bugging you for any more than 5 years, so I need to start getting my replacement in place and learning the job. I was fortunate to have about 2 years as deputy chief under Chief Croak to try and learn as much as I could before he retired. He was fortunate to have many years under Chief Morissette. So having that person in the next lowest rank learning the job makes it an easy transition. I can tell you that they always say the hardest transition in fire service is your first promotion to first level supervisor. That is the farthest thing from the truth, because there's no book your predecessor hands you to be fire chief. Everything. Fire Chief for Dummies is not a book that's in print. So the more time that you can plan for succession in the fire service, the better. So in looking at the workload that the deputy chief as far back as has been in the fire service in Easthampton since at least the early 1900s. The roles have changed over the years. In 2003, then Chief Morissette took an early retirement when the economy took a downturn. He retired early to save laying off a firefighter. Chief Croak was promoted. The deputy was left vacant, and for the first time since 1854, we actually laid off a firefighter in 2004. It would have been 2 if Chief Morissette did not retire. From his retirement in 2004 until 2006, the deputy chief's position was vacant under Chief Croak. That's where we tried many different models of filling and sharing the responsibilities of the deputy chief. The first thing he noticed right away was overtime costs skyrocketed because the chief being the only salaried employee in the building, that work had to be done by somebody outside of the normal work hours. So overtime costs started to skyrocket. In 2005, he took a look at what programs we had to do, were mandated statutorily to do, and what were the nice to do, and all the nice to do ones went away. Knock on wood, they haven't come back to bite us. Things like inspections of storefronts. If it's not with a liquor license or multifamily, we have no statutory authority to enter them or make them let us in there. So Shop Row on Main Street would be inspected. The standalone businesses on Union and Cottage Street do not regularly see an inspection unless they invite us in. That's always been my big worry, the inspections that don't get done, that are not mandated. One of those that does not fall under our statutory authority is multifamily apartment dwellings. We have quite a few of those. Building inspector became overwhelmed, and we fell woefully behind on those. You may recall a couple years ago in the town of Palmer, they had a fire in a multifamily that turned fatal. That was a building that was inspected on a regular basis, and they still had issues. Speaking with Mayor Cadger at the time, we agreed that we need to start hitting the multifamilies. We've been doing those a little over a year. We've successfully completed 25 of them because a 2-hour inspection turns into 2 hours worth of code research, follow-up inspections. Trying to do that between Captain Henneman and myself, it's not a model that works. In the letter, I included the activities, fire prevention activities for 2016. 269 permits were issued, 319 inspections, 54 code enforcement visits, and 43 fire alarm acceptance tests. That's just the activity of the fire inspector. On top of that, anytime there's a new business looking to come in, there's a plans review under Mayor Cadger in the planning department. We now have round tables for new businesses that want to come in. So they meet with all the department heads. I usually take those. They range anywhere from an hour to 3 hours. Some of the more complex ones, the medical marijuana dispensary, I probably have easily over 100 hours of research time, trip visits there, and that takes away from other duties of myself or Captain Hedeman. The deputy chief, the key role to that job is not only being there to share the administrative load, but to be that second level of management in the case of a large-scale emergency, or day-to-day if I'm out of town. God forbid I get to leave town other than picking up a child at college and bring them home, but it leaves no other management level fire officers on the scene. It leaves the shift captains there who need to be inside the fire, fighting the fire with their crews. It leaves nobody outside looking at the big picture, looking at the house or the building, seeing what's happening, see if there's a collapse imminent, seeing if there's victims hanging out. We don't have the luxury of having that person outside if I'm out of town. So firefighter safety is impacted, the citizens' safety with the inspections, and the other key piece is training. ISO, which sets insurance rates mostly for factories, not a lot of residential uses them anymore, grades fire departments from 1 to 9. Easthampton has been a 4 as long as I've been able to research. Our last assessment, they changed their grading criteria, made it more realistic. We were on the cusp of going from a 4 to a 3. One of the things that gets us is they require 700 hours per year of training per firefighter to hit the max number of credits. Even if you get 1 hour of training, you're getting points. We averaged, in the years we had deputy chief, we were averaging about 300 hours a year per person for training. Years we don't have it, internal training, we're averaging about 50 hours a year. And then some members go to the National or State Fire Academy. But we are woefully under that level. Even if we were able to add 100 more hours per firefighter, and with the improvements we made in dispatch, I think our insurance rate would drop. It's not going to affect the majority of the homeowners, but the larger commercial facilities could see a reduction in their fire insurance.
You just so we don't skip over it, you just, unfortunately, Chief Motter was not able to attend our Finance Committee meeting, so some of these things were not brought up. You just said the rating was between 1 and 9. I assume 1 is the best?
1 is the best.
Okay, so, because I got a little worried, is 9 the best? But then, okay. So 4 isn't terrible, but,
no.
But it's...
the only Class 1 department I know in the Commonwealth is Cambridge. They have a little more financial...
and that relates to how insurance companies view you for liability.
Yes, for your homeowners, the fire portion of your homeowner's insurance.
And that's the residents.
I'm told that not a lot of the insurance underwriters look at that anymore for homeowners.
Okay.
They look at it for large commercial structures. All
but
of our
those commercial structures are going to be affected in their insurance rates because we're not a level 2 or level 3. If we're staying at a level 4, those rates go up for them. Is that what you're saying?
They'll maintain, but if we drop down to a 3, their fire insurance rates could drop.
That's what I'm saying. If we were able to elevate, I'll use the word elevate, because you said down, I get to be confused. Elevate to a 3, then we're going to save our businesses money.
Yes.
That's something we didn't hear, and that's another reason to do this. Thank you.
One of the other reasons I was asked why it was not submitted in the budget, and the mayor was pushing to have it part of this year's budget, but because the job description is dated to the 1980s, I wanted to update it. In 2006, that position was pulled out of civil service. So the process we used at the time was the city hired an outside consultant, paid about $10,000 to interview one candidate. So to me, it seemed kind of foolish. So I wanted to make sure the job description and job duties were done airtight, and then we came up with a process to select the next deputy chief. So I wanted to have that extra time to get it done, and then the mayor agreed that a January 1 start date, smaller number to come up with, makes it easier to start mid-year, more manageable.
I wanted to let the council know, I should have said this. This is probably going to be an in-house position, but the interview committee will be from the outside. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Sure. The process that'll be selected, or for selecting, probably within the next week, the posting will be posted in the fire station. Eligible applicants or interested applicants who meet the requirements will submit resumes and cover letters to the personnel director, adding to her workload. That's why I'm her favorite. She will look to see who meets the requirements as outlined in the job description, and then a search committee of 2 fire chiefs outside of the area and the personnel director will conduct interviews. From those, they'll make a recommendation to the mayor and myself for selection.
And we hire from within, like you moved up to the chief's position, because unless we're having a huge controversial morale issue where we want to bring in a new chief from the outside, this is the better way to go, because this deputy chief will know all of the people involved.
Yeah, the learning curve is significantly reduced, and I've seen across, there's a lot of communities in the Commonwealth that go to the outside of their department. A lot of them go outside of the state, and it doesn't always work out for the best. I think as a manager, part of my job is to have my replacement trained. I think if I did not have somebody or more than one person ready to step into the deputy chief's job or my job, then I failed in my duties as fire chief. I believe we have a more than ample pool of qualified candidates within the ranks of the fire department, so I don't see a reason to go outside.
I have a question. I can understand the strength of hiring internally, but is there not a state requirement to at least advertise, at least statewide, or is there not?
I know when they did it last time for the deputy chief, and when I was selected for chief, it was only posted within. It wasn't posted statewide.
Well, it's not one right now for me. Councilor Hayes?
So just so I'm clear, where exactly are you going to post this job? And are we going to get a copy of that job description?
It'll be posted through the HR director's office, and I don't know what the requirements are for posting.
You said you were going to hang it in the firehouse?
Well, it'll be per the current collective bargaining agreement, any intra-department positions, I have to post it in the fire station. What the requirements with where HR needs to post them, I don't know. I just have to meet the requirements of set in the collective bargaining agreement.
Because I think Councilor McCoy brought up a good point. I don't know if that is EEOC compliant.
That's HR's job. I don't
Perhaps
post or.
she could speak to it.
Oh, well, I count. Let's let the finish
chief
first, and then we can ask.
I don't have anything else to say.
Oh, okay. Great timing there. So that's it. We said it all, right? Okay. Any questions before Councilor Kwasinski?
Sounds like a great plan. You've thought it very well through. Just had a question regarding overtime. I read in your proposal that this will save us overtime monies. And you had said that we had raised overtime when we lost the deputy chief before. Can you elaborate on how we lost the overtime? What were the factors, and why will the factors now be different?
Well, we used for department training when the deputy chief was first eliminated. Chief Morissette retired. Chief Croak assigned one of the shift captains an additional duty of training, being the training officer. So that person would come in on their days off and train the other 3 shifts. The problem would be a 1-hour class often turned into 4 hours because an ambulance would go out or 2 ambulances go out, so the class would have to wait until everybody came back. With only 5 people on duty and losing 2 right away kind of kills the quality of training you're providing. So a 1-hour class oftentimes was 4 hours overtime. Even if there was no interruptions, we're paying somebody overtime to come in and teach one class 3 different times. And then the other part of it is with the EMS coordinator, which is my ambulance manager, is an additional duty of a captain. That person is paid overtime to do all their functions. And there's a ALS, Advanced Life Support Coordinator, who takes care of our FDA licenses, our drug inventory, our narcotics control. That's all done. The people doing it now try to do as much as they can during their shift because they don't. One of the individuals has small children, so he tries to limit his time away. Tries to do as much as he can while working. The problem when we get our annual ambulance inspection, there's about a week's worth of lead-up paperwork that's done before the ambulance inspector comes in. They want to see our narcotics logs for every single day for all 3 ambulances. And we are not allowed to use an electronic means to do that. So it is a logbook, and it's every single narcotic has its own log. So there's a lot of paperwork involved with our ambulance relicensing, including the FDA portion. Because we carry controlled substances, we're also licensed through the FDA.
Quick follow-up on training. You're on 24-hour shifts now. Captains run the shift, 5 people per shift. Let's say the captain goes on vacation for a week or 2. Is it possible for the deputy to fill in as a captain then at that time, take care of trainings during the shift?
Well, the captain would not work as part of the member of the shift, or the deputy, I mean. If a captain's on vacation, then either a captain works overtime to replace him, or a firefighter is paid to work out of grade as an acting captain. So there's always a supervisor supervising the shift. The deputy would not be, and that's part of the current collective bargaining agreement with the local. It would not allow for the deputy to cover a shift except in an event of an emergency. If a captain went home for illness or family emergency, the deputy may cover, or the fire prevention officer may cover until another person's brought in.
By current agreement.
Okay. Any more questions for the chief before we let him go? Okay, thank you very much. Human Resources, can you just answer the question for us? Do you know off the top of your head, if you don't mind coming up, as far as from fire, what kind of advertising might be?
So I'd have to check specifically. Chief and I have not had an opportunity to meet since the job description's been finalized to review what we'd be doing for posting. But generally, we are posting out with equal opportunity requirements, both internally and externally. So we post in the firehouse because that's per contract, but we also post on our board. We post on the website, and so forth. And then we make a determination if we're going to go to other sources, but it is generally, usually, everything is posted externally as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Hayes?
Since you're here, could you please send me a copy of that last EEO compliance report?
I certainly can.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't think there's anyone else from the state. Anyone else from the public who would like to address the council concerning this appropriation? Okay, not saying Councilor List.
As I stated, the Finance Committee overwhelmingly approved this 3-0. We have a supplemental appropriation request. I move that the council approve it for the amount requested of $37,050. It'll be appropriated from stabilization, $37,050, to be appropriated to fire full-time supervisory, $37,050, for the following purpose: to provide funds to cover the cost of filling the vacant deputy chief's position.
Second.
Filling.
Second.
Motion a second to approve the supplemental
I have one more thing.
Okay, go ahead.
I forgot to mention that the reason the mayor is using stabilization to fund this is that normally she would use free cash, but didn't want to wait because of the timeline and getting this out there and having it be ready by the 1st. Obviously, when free cash comes in, the mayor will re-put this money along with others, as she usually does, into stabilization from free cash. And I forgot to mention that. I'm sorry.
So we have a motion and a second on the table for this appropriation. So any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes.
Mr. President, I move the public hearings be closed.
Second.
Motion second to close public hearings. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Moving on to standing committees. Public Safety, Councilor Hayes.
Thank you. We met last week to talk about school and railroad streets, consider making them one-way streets. And also we had a request to review the wording of the traffic rules and orders that we had worked on for about a year now. And Councilor Carey just told me that apparently DPW has a problem with the wording that we approved at our last meeting. So if you could throw that in an email to us, that would be great. And we're gonna have to I'm gonna make a motion for 60-day extensions on both of these items.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion, a second for 60-day extension on both the school and railroad streets as well as the traffic rules and orders. Is there a second on that? Did I hear a second?
I did,
Second,
yes.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
This concludes. I
Okay.
thought we had it right.
Mr. President, just a quick update. At our meeting, we did meet with some of the neighbors, specifically from School Street. And so our plan of action was we're going to go do a site visit to School Street and explore what options might be available beyond just one-way street, looking at parking, looking at the whole picture, because I feel like we didn't have necessarily the whole picture. So that's going to be our next meeting, is to go out and do a site visit. So,
Okay.
and that will be posted. And so if anybody wants
That
to
hasn't
tag
been set
along.
yet, right?
We haven't set that yet. No.
Okay. Great. Councilor Coniff?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, so how does the issue that you guys are wrestling with on the one-way street for railroad dovetail with the plan to reconfigure Union Street right around the bike path there? How does that coordinate with that?
If any changes were made, then when the complete street study was done, they would be included in that study. Same as if no changes are made, those intersections would be included.
So if we agreed to make Railroad Street a one-way, what if Union comes along and undoes that and says, no, it really should be a two-way because of what they're reconfiguring? I mean, I guess my point is it premature? Should we wait until Union Street finishes their design?
Come to the site visit?
I think that's a
Let's talk
valid
about it.
point. I mean, with the complete streets for Union Street is something that we've moved forward with, but we don't have funding for that project in place right now. So does it make sense for us to wait on something that is come across as a public safety issue? So.
I was going to say exactly that this is a public safety issue for school children, and I think it should be reviewed now, especially since, as Councilor Hayes said, we don't have funding in place for even that review, and that could be years down the road. And if there is a safety issue, if it comes forward as that.
Well, but actually this isn't because of the school street is where the children are. This was more because of the movement of our public safety vehicles from the firehouse.
Okay.
Oh,
That they
okay.
were having a little bit of an easier time that way.
School also
And
comes up to Union.
the Complete Streets program that was put forward, not tentative, but I mean, that's basically our plan, and this is what we would do if we were able to get the grant money. And then you really get into the bones of it after you get funded, and those will come through. But I think that's a really valid point. And like Councilor Derby said, we talked about a bunch of different things about, maybe having some different hours on some of the streets and seeing what's going on. And we really tried to engage the community. I know Councilor Carey went through and knocked on every door on School Street because, they don't want to wake up and they can only go one way out of their driveway. I mean, granted, there's only a couple of houses on that street that it would affect, but they have some strong opinions about only being able to leave their driveway one way. I mean, that's an every single day, probably giant pain. So, we've got to really make sure that everybody's sort of on board with this, but at the same time balance the public safety part of it, which is, the schools letting out and the schools drop-off times and the public safety vehicles. Yeah. So I'm going to try and get all the information together, like more in writing. We've kind of just been, it's gotten a little bit more towards the deep end of the pool as a project than it initially started out. So
That never happens.
yeah, right.
There are more than just a few houses. There's the Pascomic Club that has access off of
And-
School Street. There are
and
several
the-
apartment buildings.
Yep.
And the pride,
School
the
bus.
pride,
We
the pride
were
station.
very cognizant of the residents and the
Yeah.
businesses,
I'm
and
just-
there was a phone call.
What was the feedback from
to
the pride? Yeah. Anything?
We never heard
I
back.
never got a response.
Corporate line, and then there was a neighbor that had talked to Pride, their corporate line, and they had no idea what was going on.
Right.
So-
And just to be clear, we want the whole city to give us reactions, not just the residents
Yeah.
of that neighborhood, because I know those are very
Well-
busy streets, people going to Tandem or Pride or whatever.
We were talking about people, people scoot through to hit Dunkin' Donuts in the morning and then scoot through their other way to hit Tandem in the morning. They've got their routines, and, people are bad transition children sometimes.
Okay, Council Wynn.
Did you talk to the school department about the busing and the routing and the picking up and the dropping off of the
I believe that's
students?
something the police chief did beforehand. I could be wrong.
I reached out to the school
Yeah.
department, and
Okay.
I've reached out to the principals, and yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions on this topic? Okay, and did you say that concludes, Council?
Does concludes. I got my 60 days, right, on both?
Yes. Appointments, Councilor Smith.
Thank you. The appointment subcommittee met earlier tonight at 5:30 to specifically discuss the mayoral appointment for Brendan Rogers as the director of the Council on Aging. So Brendan is actually here tonight, and we interviewed him for about half an hour talking about some of the existing programs and his specialty as an outreach coordinator. He's been doing outreach coordination for several years with the senior center. And then we were also talking about directions to move forward with and some of the differences in demographics with the elderly population at Easthampton and some of the difference in needs between the young old and the old, if we're talking gerontology terms. And just that we have a lot of people in Easthampton that age-wise are definitely eligible to be able to use the Council on Aging, but might not be there in terms of needing medical need. So our interview with Brendan really talked a lot about some of these initiatives and his ability to be able to work with think of different grants with different agencies throughout the city and really thinking about innovative ways to move forward with the Council on Aging. So just wanted to open that up for discussion.
And since you attended, it's certainly optional if you would like to just talk to the council for 2 minutes or less, or it's completely optional because it's up to you. Okay, if you could just state your name and your address just for the record, that'd be great.
My name is Brendan Rogers. I'm on 28 Grant Street here in Easthampton. So I've been working at the Council on Aging for over 2 years now, a little over 2 years. And I just wanted to, express how much, it's changed how I look at the world of senior services, and I continue to look forward to representing our client base. And I want to carry forward, and I'm glad to be in this position right now, so we can move in a different direction. So I thank you guys for giving me the chance to come up here and introduce myself and who I am and where I'm at. So thank you.
Thank you. I guess, I'll just, and maybe Councilor Winning, you're all set.
Okay,
Thank
all right.
you very much. But I guess we were just very impressed with his resume coming from Riverside Industries, being an advocate for Riverside Industry client, and so much, I think, of senior work is advocating for people, and I think he comes with a really strong background. There's a lot of, I think, great ideas, as Councilor Smith mentioned, the young old, which I found out I think I am now, the old. I think he was really, I was just really impressed, and I think he would be a terrific fit for the position. So that's just my comment.
Yeah, my daughter works with Brendan over at Riverside, where my daughter works, and she spoke very highly of his interaction with the clients and the social work that he did, so she was very impressed. And I had the opportunity to speak to a couple of the board members on the Council on Aging, and they all had very positive feedback about Brandon's management style and his interactions with the elders. So I absolutely support this appointment for him to the Council on Aging.
Thank you. Council Smith, anything more, or just want to make a motion?
Well, we approved this appointment 3-0 at the subcommittee meeting level, and so I would make a motion to bring that to full council for a vote now.
Second.
Yeah. So I guess I just probably for completeness sake, what's the date of expiration for this?
Brendan Rogers for the appointment for the Council on Aging Director with a term expiration of 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinance, Councilor Derby.
Thank you, Mr. President. Unfortunately, we had to cancel our last meeting, but our next meeting will be a week from tonight on the 11th, 6 p.m., wherever Barbara puts us.
We have a campaign finance.
I said, I have finance on Tuesday. I'm sorry, Wednesday.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't last more than an hour.
The seminar is at 6:30 up here.
Okay. We don't need to be up here.
As long as nobody who's going wants to attend.
Okay. Tamara, I don't think.
Would be
Do you want to
good
go?
attend, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to attend, JP?
Probably wouldn't be a bad idea,
Right.
yeah. Give an
Well, you know what? I'm going to
alternative
schedule it
date.
anyway if we need to change it. So we're going to go for the 11th at 6 p.m.
5:30?
Oh, there you go. There's my quorum. So much for our regular meeting time. I guess what we'll have to do is we'll just have to schedule a new time and post it. And we're going to look at all three of the items that are on the agenda when we do that.
So no meeting.
So no meeting.
You'll-
JP wants to go. So and that concludes.
Okay. Property, Council Kwasinski.
No report?
Okay, Rules of Government Relations, Council Riss.
No report.
Okay, the only new business we have is to approve the warrant for the upcoming election, which is just letting us notify us that Tuesday, November 7th, 2017, we'll be having an election from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. to elect a mayor for 2 terms, city councilors at large, 4 for 2 terms, district city council.
For a term of 2 years. Is that 2 terms?
Oh, for 2 years. District city councilors,
Thank
5
you.
of
Good-
them
good call.
for a term of 2 years. And school committee members, 6 of them for a term of 2 years. The polling places remain the same. 1, 2, and 5 will be at Whitebrook Middle School. And precincts 3 and 4 will be at Easthampton High School. So I'll put that in from a motion to
Second.
accept that warrant.
Second.
A motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
I think we have to sign.
Are you spending money this cycle?
We have to sign.
No, I guess.
Right, you still may be spending money.
Oh, really?
You were going to write a petition letter.
Time is-
Who made it, who seconded it? Sorry.
I second.
Reached out to him.
Who made it?
I think Dan.
Who did the,
The warrant.
I did now, somebody else.
Start these.
We'll get around.
I'll save
These are moments where I miss my mom.
Mom, what's going on with me?